Yes? No? All right. Good? Okay.
Is this working?
No.
We're on.
Is this working?
It doesn't sound like it's on. It's working.
Does this one work? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, just pass it on left.
Try again.
How about now?
How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, my name is Russell Levivat. I'm the director of game programming here at Regna. Tonight we have a pretty awesome treat for you guys. We have some spectacular names up here to talk about the Inception part of gaming. So, I'm going to very quickly let everybody introduce themselves. I'll start with a few questions to sort of give this panel some shape and some form, and then afterwards, for the last half, we'll turn it over to you guys. Okay? So, go ahead, Mon.
All right. I'm Monte Cook. I've been a game designer for 25 years. Probably best known for D&D 3rd Edition. Worked on a lot of other D&D products. I also wrote HeroClix, and I'm working on a brand new game called Numenera.
I'm Jason Bulmahn. I'm the lead designer at Paizo Publishing. I got into the industry as the managing editor of Dragon Magazine, and I'm probably best known for Pathfinder.
My name is Jason Morningstar. I'm half of Bully Pulpit Games. We're a small press company, probably best known for Fiasco.
I'm Michael A Goodwin. I'm a freelance author. I primarily work for White Wolf Publishing, Dark Ages, World of Darkness, especially designing core rules for Exalted 2nd Edition, writing Moves to the Magic for the latter half of the 1st edition and all of the 2nd edition lines. I also have an upcoming book, game line that I'm launching, Grimwatch, which will be coming in the next year.
Okay, so what we're talking about is the inception of video games and basically how they go from idea to on the bookshelf for most people, or in some cases PDF. So, just generally speaking, you guys, if you could comment on when you're first getting that idea. Is it for? I've talked to some designers, and it has literally been, I have this moment, I have this idea, I'm going to make this game, and then that's where they go from there. But I've also talked to other designers that have a more dedicated vetting process. For example, I know the guys who did Changeling and the most recent Changeling game, and that was part of a very dedicated vetting process where they all sat in a pool of different authors and they bounced ideas back and forth, and they, there was even a thumbs up, thumbs down process. When you guys are coming up with a game and starting up here, it's just a germ of an idea. Is there a vetting process? A. B. What if there is one? What is that vetting process?
Well, so I have worked in that way in a number of different ways. I've worked where just I alone was working on a concept, and that can be just that moment of inspiration. I've literally had things come to me in dreams. That kind of just moment of inspiration that just instantly becomes a great idea, or what I think is a great idea for a game. But other times, working by myself, for the game that I'm working on now, one of the basic ideas for the game system actually came to me about 20 years ago, and I just haven't done anything with it. And it sat sort of on a shelf in my brain for the last 20 years, and now I'm finally using it. So that's happened a number of different ways. But then, there's a process like the 3rd edition D&D design process, which is, a team of us sitting in a room for 3 years, where we would just, sit down and say, okay, today we're going to talk about 2nd level cleric spells, right? And that was the day's work, where it was very, very collaborative, bouncing ideas off of each other. And all of those have their advantages and their disadvantages. They all work. it's just, I think there's a real value in a single designer who has a vision, has a great idea, and kind of carries that through, but there's also a huge amount of value in having a number of talented people together who can bounce ideas off of one another, because everyone comes up with an idea that they think is great but isn't, right? And so you need someone to tell you, no, that's not a good idea.
That's certainly true. It's interesting because in some cases, when we were first starting to do Pathfinder, it's because we had to. We needed a rule set. I had been playing around with the rules and just tinkering with things, and then it just kind of morphed organically into its own, set of the rules. Since then, things have shifted focus. It started that way, and it was just kind of like, well, we need this, let's do it. What can we do to fix it? And a lot of it was just me brainstorming up ideas and throwing them up in front of the team when it was done, and just being like, hey, what do you think of this? And there were a lot of missteps. You show things off, and it's like, no, that's crazy. Don't ever do that ever again. And so there was a diagram I was trying to show them about how to do cover, and it was just like, this is crazy, stupid, complicated. to go back to the drawing board. And since then, we do things a lot more in a group. We come up with an idea, and we end up kind of getting this big list of ideas about various books we can do or various things we want to try, and then they just kind of sit for a while, and we let them kind of mature, and everybody, will revisit them and go, okay, was that really a good idea? Is that really something we want to do? And we'll cook it and add to it and morph it and change it, and it'll slowly take shape until we get to a point where we're like, that's ready, this is the right time, let's do it. So that tends to be how we get things started at Paizo.
And yeah, I don't throw anything out, so there are ideas that percolate for a long time. I don't know if I have a 20-year-old idea yet, but there are things that are certainly on the back burner that I know someday will be valuable, but today are certainly not valuable. And I'm glad you mentioned dreams, because I'm often reticent to say that, but it happens to me too. Sometimes I get solutions to game design problems in dreams. I'll wake up and have to write something down, which is creepy and weird, and I don't understand what's happening, but it's true. But otherwise, I'd echo what you said, that working individually can be very rewarding, and I have the luxury of doing that quite often, but also collaborating can often greatly improve something, because you've got multiple brains working on it, and I really enjoy working in that mode as well.
For me, my process, I tend toward a tiered vetting process. First, I will prepare something solo, make sure that I have solid ideas that would at least seem to work, even if they aren't in their final form. Then I take them over to advisors who I trust, other writers, other people who I feel are highly confident, capable of system design, and basically have them kick the tires on it and try to give me a round of feedback before it's seeing anything approximating public testing or even beta testing. And then after that's come back, I've had a chance to incorporate that feedback. Then I give it out to different competent gaming groups to play with, poke at, and then give me their feedback. And usually by that point, I feel confident to write it into whatever its final form is. But it's pretty critical for me also that I have different advisors that are siloed out to different parts of projects. I have an autistic gentleman who can do probability curves in his head, and I'll show him numbers, and he will return back just the crunch values of what the odds were of something.
Can I get his contact info?
Yes, we could probably arrange that. But I do not approach him for anything remotely narrativist, because he's a gamist at heart, and he doesn't like those elements or that style of play. So I try to make sure that I have a diversity of play styles represented among people who are doing the vetting to make sure that I'm hopefully bringing them all over at the same time.
One thing that's interesting, I just want to add here at the end, because it's become clear to me. I think a lot of times you start off with a single designer trying to bring clarity and focus and vision to a project before you kind of open it up to everybody else to look at. You almost kind of need that. You need one person to kind of drive it forward, because you can end up with way too many chefs trying to bake the cake, and then you end up with a cake with strawberry peanut butter and motor oil in it.
It's only good for Snoopy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we talked about where the idea, you have this idea, then you start developing it, and then presumably you get some like maybe initial game design together. And we're also going to presume that you don't just throw this away in the trash, right? This thing has legs. Talk to everybody about the playtest phase, when you start to test it out, when you actually start to put dice to it. If you could just talk about that process for a little bit.
Well, so I think that there are a number of phases within the playtest phase for me. I think that everything that I start with, sometimes I actually start with the playtest first, and that seems weird, but when I was doing a lot of D20 design, the products that I was coming out with through my own company, Malhavik Press, were actually it was just material that I had developed in the middle of a game in order to fill holes and meet needs that I saw in the game. And so the playtesting actually came before the actual concepting of the rules, which seems really weird, but that's kind of the way it worked. But in a more normal case, I would say that when you first start playtesting, it's just you and whoever you can drag into a room and sitting down and playing. Now, of course, we can play online. I actually do a lot of my personal playtesting online on things like Google Hangouts. But I kind of think of that as the alpha phase. The beta phase is very, very important because that's the phase that you're not directly involved in. That's where you actually have rules that you can hand to someone else and say, play this game, and I'm not going to be there, right? Because you can't put me in the book or the box and send me along to, the end consumer. So
We'll just miss you real fun.
And so I'm not, you can't be there to answer questions, right? And the other thing is like, if you're talking about a role-playing game, if the designer is the guy running the game, you have a lot of problems because as a good game master, you just naturally ad-lib and fill in, fix the problems, right? Because you just want a smooth game. So you're not finding the holes, you're sort of fixing them on the fly. But in the playtest stage, you want to find the holes, so you want to give it to somebody else and have them say, oh, when we were in the middle of this, social interaction scene, everything fell apart because, there's this die roll involved and we didn't even know what to add. So that kind of thing is very, very important. Making sure that there's playtesting going on where you are not involved at all.
It's also what you're calling the beta playtest. There, not only are you playtesting the procedures, but you're also playtesting the information design, right? Because it's out of your hands, and you've got essentially a teaching text and instruction manual.
Right. The way I look at it is there's actually a phase, I don't know what you call it, even after that, where you're actually testing the presentation, right? It's no longer a question of do these rules work, but it's can I convey accurately how these rules work.
I would say that I also reverse some of the steps that you're describing, which is that I prefer to have the first round of playtesting be that I'm observing someone else running it and just sit in the corner and take notes. Because if I'm running it, I'm doing a lot of the same things that you're describing, and I can patch up more on that first round by observing what are my assumptions and what can I throw out about my assumptions. And then the second round would be where I'm personally and trying to take advantage of what I've learned.
Yeah, well, that thing that I've been calling the alpha stage, which is where I am right now with Numenera, is the rules are all still just in my head, basically, right? So there isn't something to give to anyone else. It's just, hey, what if we rolled the dice this way, kind of testing,
Yeah, for me, generally speaking, I'm usually writing that first design concept. I generally try and flesh out just enough pieces to do a proof of concept game, where I'm like, okay, this is the idea about what we want it to be. I'm gonna write just enough, just the bare bone minimum necessary, so that we can sit down and play and see whether or not this is actually working, whether or not it's going in the right direction. Because for me, there's no point in writing, a 300-page book and then going, oh wait, half this doesn't work. Let's rewrite 150 pages instead. It's much better to write 15 pages and go, okay, does this work? Okay, good. Let's build more of this. and let's take it from there. And that's generally, somewhere in that mid stage is where you kind of hit, for us anyway, when we generally hit our big open play test, when we'll give out the documents to everybody who wants to see them and say, hey, poke holes in this. But generally speaking, we have a relatively high confidence level before we get to that point, because we've played it a bunch in-house, we've passed it around, everybody's kicked the tires on it and went, yes, this is what we're looking for.
There's another step also I do playtesting, which is known as a pre-step, which is not a full-on playtest, but essentially thought experiment versions of it, where you take whatever the rule in question is and examples of play, give it to somebody, and they tackle that as a singular riddle. Can they handle that? Can they process this step using the information they have available to them? And I do that typically with other writers more than I do so with just fans or members as a whole, so that I can get cherry pick. Is this piece sound enough that I can build something on top of it?
I generally just play test out the combats while I'm in the shower.
Which is a good segue to the last piece, which of course is playing with yourself. Which is very valid and very important.
Let's go with the last one.
And we're off the rails.
Well,
It's okay, it's after dark.
I did want to add one thing, although it's tough to follow that. There's actually kind of an issue that we've been sort of skirting around, but I think it's valuable to bring up, and that is that I think that even when it comes to rules design for an RPG, there's really two different kinds of design, at least from my point of view. There's system design and there's content design. The difference there being that, and both equally valid and both having their own challenges. But systems design, of course, is I'm going to create an entirely new game, and so I've got to test everything. And content design being I'm going to design new parts for this game, right? So if you're a new monster for D&D or something. And the reason that's so different is because in one, you're fitting an idea, you're taking the inception of the idea and you're fitting it into an existing framework. And the other, you're creating an entirely new framework. And it's a different approach, and it's a very different kind of end result in what you have to explain to the player.
And the emergent properties of both of those are quite different as well.
Yeah.
Tug on one and everything else falls out. Big domino effect.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes pieces end up blurring that line even though, sort of, right? Because sometimes you can create new content that is meant to fill out the rule set and you'll be like, well, wait, we can do entirely new things. Let's create an entire new category of pieces to go with this, and it kind of breaks the paradigm and goes off in different directions. So things can kind of bleed between the two, but most of the time it's pretty standard.
Okay, so we talked about the idea. We talked about playtesting it, right? Let's talk about something that is not often talked about with role-playing games. So you have the playtesting done, you have sort of like the text done, you've got that written. Can you guys talk briefly about when the artist comes in, what point, right? And how the artist interacts with, say, a RPG. And then also talk about stuff like layout and galley and that sort of thing.
There's never enough art to possibly go with the text that you want. Never enough art to represent all the images that you want to see right in there. So part of the challenge is making sure that you pick carefully what images that you want to have illustrated that are going to ideally capture.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sorry, that you want to ideally capture what images are iconic to the gameplay experience, and what in the text do you, if illustrated, is going to really draw people into that. There's never enough art to really convey everything we want to see. Real. So I'd say that can be one of the hardest challenges is making art notes.
Something that Eloy Santa said in the last panel was it's probably better to have no art than to have bad art. And I tend to agree with that because art is a tool you can use to communicate what your game is about just as much as functional text is. So certainly that's something I always keep in mind when I'm art directing. Working with artists is to make sure that the pieces they're creating are going to communicate something about the game that enhances that experience, that does something different than the text does, perhaps, to infill the setting or to make implications about gameplay that are important.
Yeah, for us, there's also kind of a marketing element to it too. You have to kind of look at it from a lot of different angles, because when somebody picks the book up off the shelf and they start flipping through it, they don't have time to read the text, right? I mean, that's not happening. But they certainly are going to stop and look at the pretty pictures. And it's not just about making pretty pictures, right? I mean, you just want art that looks like a bunch of guys kicking a bunch of monsters' ass. I mean, right? It's like that's what people want to see, at least for this game. So a lot of times, that starts weaving into, how the graphic designers start working with the book and how they're presenting information and how the layouts are kind of, how they pop and how they read and how the book just looks visually interesting. I mean, if it's just page upon page upon page of just text in columns, it starts to look like a textbook. And nobody wants to read that. I mean, so art becomes a tool to make what can be, in some cases, rather dry text, but interesting and exciting. So it's a very vital role and a very important part of the book design process. And sometimes you can use it to be narrative. I once ordered all the art for a book I did, a Dungeonscape, and throughout the book, they changed a lot of this, unfortunately. But my initial order had it. The book was all about dungeons, and throughout the art through the book, I was telling a story of the heroes going through a dungeon, and in each chapter I would kill off one of the iconic characters. And so as you get through the book, by the end they were all dead, and the only person who got out alive, I think, was Linny, with all the treasure. So you can do those sorts of fun games that people will get drawn to too. So there's a lot of fun elements to the art.
So, talking about the overall look and presentation of a book is something that I've really struggled with for years, because, well, the realization that I've come to, and this is very self-accusatory, is that basically I think that we've been doing it wrong forever. And that is that just about everybody writes their game, writes their setting, writes their adventure module, and then creates what's called an art order, which is a bunch of descriptions, and sends it to an artist and says, here, please illustrate these things. And the problem with that is that, in my experience, I've known a lot of writers and I've known a lot of artists. If you give an artist text, they feel confined. If you give a writer an illustration, they feel energized, and it gets their creative energy going. And so I really think that the artist should be involved in the process much earlier than RPG designers usually allow it to happen. So I'm trying that out. For example, with Numenera, the first person that I got involved with me in this is the artist Kieran Yenner. And in fact, arguably, he has produced more for Numenera than I have at this point, because he's done a lot of concept art. You can see it a lot on the website right now. And it has given this game life at a stage much earlier than I would normally have experienced it, having given life, or been given life. I have written very, very little of this game yet, and already I feel like I understand it, I've got a handle on it, I've got things I can show to people, I've got things I can tell people about it. I think that art is, it's the oldest cliche there is, right? But, a picture really is worth at least 1,000 words. And, I can show you 3 or 4 pictures of well-done art and give you an idea much faster than I can show you a bunch of text and make you read it. I'm not trying to put down text, right? I'm a writer. But there's so much value in art. When we did Talos, the big campaign setting that we did a few years ago, about 6 years ago now, that book, when we wanted to design the look of it, right? Because you asked about layout and design, and basically I just threw out all the conceptions that we had about role-playing game setting books, and I didn't want Talos to look like any of them. Instead, what I looked at was travel guides, because what I realized was that this book was a travel guide to a place that just didn't happen to exist. And so, if you look at it, it actually looks an awful lot more like a Lonely Planet book or one of those DK books than it does a more traditional role-playing game book. And I think that there's just a lot of value in that, in kind of looking outside of the traditional way of presenting things.
Even if you don't have the advantage of having finished art that was made specifically for your game, just being able to point to other media that is inspiring, that evokes the kinds of images that you're going for, and assemble kind of a gallery of these are the things you must see to get you in the feel of writing this. I go through that step of gathering those inspirations as part of writing out the outline for any given book, or writing this setting Bible for a particular run. Even before that art exists, some of that art exists, and we want to make sure that we're capturing that at the earliest stages of development.
Right. Even before Kieran started working on anything for Numenera, he and I were looking at like the works of Mobius and things like that, which suddenly gave us a language to speak when we wanted to talk about what the world looked like, what the game was going to look like. It's just so valuable.
Yeah, concept art isn't used nearly enough in our industry. That is certainly true. We get Wayne to do concept art for us now and again, but we don't even do it enough. We really should do more. But he like did back when we were just starting Galarian before the role playing game. When we were doing the adventure path, we asked him to do some goblins for us. And we were like, can we get you to show us what goblins could look like? And
those are cool goblins.
yeah, they're great. Yeah. They're great. And Wayne is just like, well, yeah, sure. He's British. Like, yeah. He talks like that. Sorry, I love doing that. He tells the story about it. He was just sitting in the tub and he folded a sponge in half, and that became the goblin face. And those freaky little twisted goblins inspired a song and their whole, outlook on life. And killing horses and murdering dogs and burning everything in sight, and it all started from that piece of art, and none of that would have happened. I mean, those goblins and that whole story and their whole appeal all comes from that concept art we got very early on.
Art also has the ability to be media tie-in. If you've been watching Dragon Con TV, you may have noticed the various sci-fi janitors skits. Those are all those characters were originally conceived of as being within the my group launch game setting, and this is a spin-off tie-in to this of what it's like to be in the division of this organization who has to clean up the mess after the superheroes have come in and kicked the monster's butt. And whether that's literally cleaning up the mess or that's doing the media spin doctoring, that's what containment does. So being able to have that means that Bob and Carl will appear in small pieces in the art here and there as cameos, and it's going to be an opportunity to do these kinds of tie-ins for promotion.
Okay, so we've talked about the idea, playtesting, art, and layout. So let's talk about when you have a product that goes to print and then distribution. Can you talk about how does the book go? Do you just send it off to the printer? Hey, take care of it, and then talk about distribution as well, if you don't mind.
When we send books off to the printer, we generally send them gigantic, incredibly huge PDF files that are incredibly high res, and they take them. And these days it's all digital. It used to be done that they would have to do these plates and printer proofs and things like that they would then have to ship us, and then we would have to color correct and all this other boring technical stuff that I won't drag you into. These days, it's all, they go through it, upload it to their digital file format, and then send us back proofs that are generated from those. And those are electronic as well, and then we page through those and make sure that their process didn't mess anything up. And we go, yes or no, fix this, fix that. Then they hit the big print button, and considering how fast those machines work, they print all of our books in like a week or less, because they go incredibly fast. Then the books come out of the process all wet and humid and have to be put in drying rooms so they don't get all warped and weird. And they sit for a while and then they get put on a boat and shipped here. That whole process takes months, generally speaking, for it to end up in our warehouse, where it then goes out into distribution. The game industry has a number of distributors that take orders for the various game stores, and then so we ship it to them, and then they ship it to the game stores. We don't ship direct. That would be crazy. We let professionals do it.
And what kind of quantities are you talking about for Pfizer?
I really can't say, but it's very, very, very large numbers. It's a lot bigger than it used to be. Our core rulebook lines are printing more than anything else. Every time we hit the print button, we keep making the number bigger and bigger and bigger, and it never seems to be enough. So,
Congrats.
yeah. It's a terrible problem to have. Yeah, no, I'm lucky. I mean, the numbers are really big. We now get them in shipping containers. If that gives you any idea,
Yeah,
like the big, large boat shipping containers, we now get multiples. So, I mean, the books come in big, gigantic trucks, and then we've got a bunch of very dedicated warehouse staff who curse my name on a daily basis for making them move around very, very heavy books. They were so angry with Ultimate Equipment because the manufacturer packed them only 6 to a box. Normally you get like 12 in a box or something, but they did these little boxes of 6, so every time they want to ship more out, then they're trying to fill smaller orders, they have to constantly open up more and more boxes, so they just look at you with a scowl, like it was my choice. So anyway, it goes out to distribution and then makes its way out to the game stores. That entire process, from the moment we ship the PDFs to the moment it hits stores, for print runs of our size generally take about a grand total of 4 months, 4 to 5 months, depending. Sometimes it can go a little faster if you get lucky and you don't hit Chinese New Year, which will close down all the printers over there for like a month. So yeah, it's a tricky process and incredibly dull.
So to go to the absolute other end of that scale, most small press companies are printing hundreds or thousands using digital printing domestically with companies sometimes in their hometown. We use Alpha Graphics in Seattle for some of our work. We use Taylor. We've gone to Taylor because they do a really good job of full color, short run stuff. And the extreme end of that, which is not really where I live anymore, but I used to, there are people who fulfill them themselves or have tiny collectives that are fulfilling both for stores and for individuals, and people who just exist in the electronic space as well. So there's quite a gap there. We use distributors now, but we didn't for a while. We used the Indie Press Revolution, which is sort of a distributor, I guess. So, the micro scale, there's a whole different economy going on.
Yeah, Indie Press Revolution is actually really great. They're an aggregator. They take a lot of smaller press runs and then bundle them all together under one flagship that they can go through distribution easily. They're kind of like a middle step for very small publishers. They're great for the industry.
Which is fantastic for retailers because they don't have to deal with individual companies. They can get that rated via IPR and still get an assortment of games that maybe people are asking for, but that are a really niche product.
I don't really have much to add here, being just on the author side of it mostly. It has all been black box to me. I turned in the draft, and lo and behold, at some point later on, there was a book.
Must be nice.
Now that I'm launching a game line, I'm finding myself having to learn all this stuff, and it is so much to take in. And I would say, honestly, it was easier to learn the craft of writing games than it was the craft of getting them out there. And I've definitely been grateful for all the guidance that I've been receiving just this con from some colleagues up here.
The only thing I would add is that I sort of believe that we're right at the cusp of what is probably going to be a huge revolution in the way books are printed and the way that games are produced, and by I mean board games. There are so many new innovations coming along that are here or just about here in print on demand, manufacturing on demand, that we're gonna see a day where you don't have to do a print run of 10,000 copies of a book. You don't have to do a print run of 100 copies of a book. You can do a print run of 1 copy of a book, and it can be cost effective, and you can have all kinds of wonderful things. When I got started in the industry, when I got started in publishing, which was a while ago, there were just these hard and fast rules, right? For example, every book. There's a reason, for example, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, right? That most adventure modules in the RPG industry are 32 pages long, and that's because that's what's called a signature in printing, right? That 32 pages is what fit onto the printer well, right? Without getting into a lot of specifics. Well, that's kind of gone away, or in the process of going away, and soon you'll be able to have a 34-page adventure, and there won't be any reason not to, right? Right now, I was just talking to a print buyer and saying about how, they can, in the middle of a print run, just throw an extra page into 100 copies in the middle of it if you wanted to do something special in 100 copies. And there's no change, there's no cost. That kind of thing, when I started in the industry, would have been unthinkable, right? Adding an extra page is effectively making an entirely new book. And so there's exciting things for customization. You're going to see cards being able to be printed on demand, which is going to revolutionize collectible card games. There's a lot of exciting things that are right on the cusp of happening.
Yeah, actually, some of that stuff is already here in many regards. I mean, you look at like Game Crafter? No, it's the website where you can basically upload the specs to your board game and they will print it for you.
Right.
You can get that now. You can get print on demand is now blown up. I mean, they now have giant machines that there's a few of them even in Seattle where you can just go with this, you can go and say, I want this book, and it will print that book for you right then and there, and it will be ready in like an hour. It's crazy. That level of change is coming to the point where we might see a rather large change in the industry as a whole, to the point where you just buy the PDF and now you have rights to it. You can go print a copy if you want, and that's just how it works. And I'm not saying it is going to go that way, but it could.
And that PDF could be a PDF of Settlers of Catan.
Exactly.
Right.
That could be anything, right? I mean, yeah. It could be an entire collectible card game. You just buy the PDF of a booster. Boy, that's weird.
Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to you guys. See what you guys have to say, or if you guys have any specific questions.
Say you have a game that's been created, you find someone who's willing to print it, so you'll have hard copy, or you decide to release it primarily in PDF, whatever. Can you speak a little on finding a distributor, someone to distribute it, more than you take a box of it to your local game shop and go, hey, will you put these on the shelf, please?
That would be self-distribution if you did that.
And for the record, don't.
Yeah, that would be difficult. So we're all primarily RPG guys, and right now, if you talk to distributors, you're going to find out that right now hobby games are doing wonderfully. The industry of hobby games as a whole is as good or better than ever. But that is primarily board games. The RPG corner, tiny little niche of that is not what it once was. And so it is probably more difficult, perhaps, than ever to get a major distributor to pick up a role-playing game.
The best way to start that, just as a note, is really you need to if you were, let's say, writing your own role-playing game, and the best way to do that would be just to start getting the word out there, getting the PDF out there, getting people playing it, even if it's not print copies yet, just getting word of mouth, getting buzz out there. Because when you approach the distributors, they're going to be like, well, why should we? Because basically you're asking the distributor to spend their valuable time and shelf space and product space to bring in your product and then push it to all their stores who may or may not order it. And if they don't have any confidence that that's going to sell, they won't pick it up. And that's a really high hurdle to clear. But the upside here is that if you start building buzz and word of mouth, there's a lot more confidence that that is going to be possible. And to be honest, these days, all it takes is one really big Kickstarter, and everybody will know about your thing. So there are ways to do that, but it's all about getting out the word about it.
And celebrate mutualism. Help other people get involved in a community that's designing games similar to yours. Support them, they'll support you. That's a great way to get your name out there. And also services like Indie Press Revolution are really designed to aggregate very small press companies, so that's an option to think about. Also think about just going digital. You know, skip the distribution channel entirely. You can set that up yourself. If all you're delivering are PDFs and you can put a PayPal button on the website, you're good to go. Oh yeah, and of course then you put your catalog on Lulu, and if they want a hard copy, they're good to go. So at the very micro scale, that's all doable.
So here's a question for all of you for your game designer hats. The terms balanced and broken get tossed around a lot in game design. What do those mean to you?
That's like a whole other panel.
How much time we got?
The cynical answer is the game's broken if I didn't design it. It's like the lighting designer. If you become a lighting designer, you will never see a well-lit theatrical play again. You're always gonna. That's just the nature of the beast. You're looking at things differently than someone who's just there to enjoy it. But broken is a cruel term, and it's unfair in every particular, because there's a lot of subjectivity there. Is a game broken because the rules don't interface with the player's, particular player's social contract in a way that makes everybody happy? I don't know.
I actually do like the term broken, but I like to use the term broken sparingly. What I like to use it for is to mean, has the game failed to result in the play experience that was intended? If the rules failed to engender that response. If you have a system and it works and it resolves things and it produces something that has a very different tone or feeling. If you have a game that wasn't intended to have high lethality, but if a single hit lands, you're splattered. Then,
as an example out of the blue.
As an example out of the blue. then you're going to have it's going to change the tone of the game. And so if the goal was two heroes wailing on one another in this epic duel that lasts days, while storms rage overhead, and one blow that hits is going to end the fight, then the game system is broken. It's broken to its intent. And so that's how it can break. You establish an intent and you fail to execute it in that way.
When we did the design, when we had released 3rd edition D&D, we went on the internet, and yeah, there was internet back then. It was done with smoke signals. we went online and we looked at people's initial reactions, and there were message board threads about how the game is broken because the wizard is clearly the best class, and then another one where the game is broken because the monk is clearly the best class, and there was one that was the game is broken because clearly the fighter is the best class. Basically, we looked at all of that and we said, well, then the game must be balanced.
But yeah, 3.0 haste was busted. No. Yeah, it is a lot of that, right? It's so subjective, and I think a lot of people are looking at it from they're like, wow, this spell or this feat or this combo really lets you do something really, really broken. No, we just wanted you to be good at something, right? I mean, and I think that's a matter of opinion for a lot of people. And yeah, Monty's right. You get it from 84 different angles all in the same thing, telling you that each other thing in turn is broken, and they can't all be broken. So some of you are wrong. I just can't pick which ones. I'll roll some dice.
Hope you don't know one.
On the issue of balance, because I spoke to broken, not to balanced. Balance is something that you can design according to different rubrics. If in terms of game-based approaches to play, where you're all starting from an even playing field and that you have tactical decisions that you can make, whether that's literally combat or just strategic style of play. If you're doing that and you end up having systems that allow for multiple options to have roughly comparable competency and a diversity of experiences that are roughly comparable in how well they're represented in the game itself and the challenges that that game presents. That's going to be one definition of balance. Another is that if to use Exalted, it is not when you have rules in many spells for, and here's the terrible thing that happens to any mortal that's in the vicinity of this magic being used, let alone it being targeting them. And then you have rules for these solar god kings. There is no balancing between them. There is no intent to have a parity of it. But that's also what allows you to have such radically different moods and tones of gameplay experiences inside the same setting, because the vantage points are all different. So trying to make everything line up on an even playing field, it may not even be a desirable goal, and thus it may actually make it broken even as you're balancing things.
I think another example of balance and sort of the fallacy of balance is in Fiasco, where spotlight time is rigidly apportioned. Everybody's going to have the same number of scenes, the same number of actions, and yet a Fiasco game always ends up being about that one dumbass. That happens because the situation that you create and the characters that inhabit that situation are inherently unbalanced, and that's okay, and that makes it fun.
Interestingly enough, I actually think balance can kind of be the enemy of the game designer. I've known a lot of game designers who have tried way too hard and spent way too much time trying to make everything equal. Unfortunately, you can't let that get in the way of fun, right? I mean, ultimately people are here to have fun, and there's kind of a meta game that happens with most games. And the meta game is, how do I do something really cool that lets me win? And we actually kind of want to encourage you to do that. The game's set up for you to win. I try my hardest to not let you win. Add a couple liches, we're good. But you have to write a game that allows everybody to do cool, fun things. And cool, fun things are not always the thing that is the most balanced with what the guy right next to you can do in that situation. So it's all about sharing, whose turn is it to do something super awesome? Let's all go around the table and do super awesome things together. Super awesome fun team.
Jason mentioned the social contract that is inherent in every game group, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I actually don't think that actual balance comes from rules at all, right? Balance comes from the game master and the players working together around the table to make sure that everyone has a good time. And you can have a balanced game where the characters all have wildly different abilities, wildly different power levels, but if everyone around the table is having a good time, if they all leave that having the experience that they want to have had, that's a balanced game.
And balance is also rooted by the omnipotence of the game master. It does not matter that your character is immune to fire, because he can just decide that something else, the lightning is going to strike you instead. That there is no way to balance against the omnipotence of the game master. So all you can do is get back to, we're not actually adversaries here. We're trying to do something fun together.
Thank you.
Somebody comments.
I've noticed something about everyone's mutual histories here, and I have a question for all of you in the various processes of, like Jason, I know Pathfinder was sort of Pathfinder was on D 3.5, and that was sort of from Wizards of the Coast, and Monte, you were working with them for a while before you went up there. My question is really, what would you suggest to little third-party publishers or even individual authors who felt the need to break away from their the big kid sort of thing and then go off on their own? Like in your own little company.
Yeah, that's a question.
What advice would you give to them?
So you want to start a little company, a scrappy little company?
Not personally.
With someone who does? Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Do it. There's nothing stopping you. It's never been easier. It's never been easier. absolutely is getting easier all the time, which is actually kind of a problem for someone like me, because now I have all these competitors who are these micro publishers who are, you know, nipping at my heels, and I just want them all to die. Hey, I love them. They're my friends. Celebrate mutualism.
He will kill you.
Having actually bitten one of my developers. I would say that there comes a point, or there came a point recently for me, where I had put the better part of a decade into Exalted, and I saw that the direction that the game was going in was shifting, and I respect the direction that it's going in. I respect the refocusing of it. I think that refocusing is necessary to keep the game alive, but at the same time, the elements that drew me in and made me most excited to be writing in that sandbox were gradually pulling back into the back burner. And what I saw to that was either I can try to write to somebody else's artistic vision that doesn't really resonate with me and isn't the kind of game I would want to play, or I can walk out of this and I can go and make the game that belongs to me, make the game that I want to play, make the game that allows me to throw out all of the assumptions and baggage that came with systems that were given to me. So that is a very liberating but also very terrifying thing, because suddenly I no longer have external deadlines driving this forward. And suddenly I no longer have the safety net of having so many people who've gone before doing it right, doing it wrong, with these kinds of rules. All of a sudden it's all on me to be able to do that. That is very liberating. It is the most wonderful feeling as a game designer that I've ever had, to be able to produce a product like that. But it is easily magnitudes of greater challenge than merely being given an outline and told, produce X number of words on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been easier right now to do it on your own, to strike out and give it a try right now. The options for printing PDF and the social media to get your word out and spread is, all of those tools are so useful and so handy that, I mean, 10 years ago, none of those existed, at least not in their current form. And you never know where it's going to take you. I mean, there's certainly, you're right, there's a shelter in being just like, oh, I'm a freelance writer, I write what I'm, contract I'm given, and that's certainly very comfortable and very safe, because you're going to write this, you're not on the hook for anything, nobody's livelihood depends on it. And then you take that moment when you start writing your own game and you hope it does well, and if it does, you end up, hero panels at Dragon Con.
I'm keeping my day job, in the meantime.
Yeah, step one, keep your day job.
Or very well.
Yeah. That's one strategy. Do we have any available millionaires?
How about the guy in the yellow shirt? You got to get up a lot.
In terms of art and copyright, for the most part, is the art and the artist who's drawing all these pretty pictures, is that considered a commission or work for hire, or is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Almost 100% of the time, yes.
What?
Yeah, we at Paizo do work for hire. We buy all rights and all republication rights. It's just the only way we can make that work.
What rights do the original artist creators still have then, since you got to work for hire?
Usually, the artist retains the right to be able to use the piece of art themselves, not in publication, but in their portfolio, on their website, things like that, or to make prints, things like that. But not occasionally, depending on who you're working with, you might find someone who is willing to give you the reprint rights, right, so that you can sell it again or whatever. But that's uncommon. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of art that goes into things like Spectrum, which is the big art collections and stuff at the end, and that's usually also still within the artist's rights to put it into a book like that.
We do it a little different. Our artists retain all the rights to their work. We're essentially printing it from them. It works for us on the scale that we operate at, and it's better for the artist because we're probably not paying what you guys are paying, so giving them more complete freedom to do future things with that work makes sense.
I'm not yet far enough in the process to be able to answer that question.
I do a lot of programming, and there's been several occasions where I've stopped to go out, have lunch, have dinner, especially while I'm working on a particularly tough problem. I'll get out, the light bulb will go off, I'll have an idea, I'll be able to fix it, or, come up with something new. Have you guys ever had that kind of like light bulb moment where you look back and realize, maybe I can change this, it might be a little bit better, or, maybe there's a way of getting around that particular problem?
All the time. I think if there was someone here who knew a little bit more about psychology than I do, I know that there are terms for that, right? Where you specifically stop thinking about a problem, but you've got a level in your subconscious that is still working on it, that is actually able to work on it better, right? That's why you get all your best ideas when you're shaving, right?
Shaving, shower. I call it putting the idea in my rock tumbler and just throw it in there, and it'll come out polished eventually, and I just leave it alone and go do something else. I go for walks.
That's why I've got so many good ideas on bev naps from restaurants. It's like, light bulb goes off and I've got to grab something to write down before I forget.
And not to be too much of a downer for it, but for me also, I'm bipolar, and manic episodes sometimes provide me with what amounts to mainlining the news, and it allows a chance to produce very, very high volumes of work in a short time. But the problem is it's unsustainable, and usually the crash that follows it means that there's a net loss of productivity. But for just getting over the hump of I'm faced with this enormous design challenge and what I need is an ingenious solution, sometimes those moments that strike out of the blue can be very, very helpful. It's just about juggling one's health and safety in the process.
We got time for one more, and you've had your hand up the whole time.
Thanks. Well, this is actually directed to Jason Bulmahn, because I'm a huge fan of Fiasco.
Thank you.
But now the stuff that's appearing on Geek and Sundry, or did appear in Hag, is in Target. They're going to be in Target stores. And you were talking earlier about distribution and obviously being the small guy. How does that change your game plan?
Well, first of all, Fiasco will never be a Target because we say fuck in it. Where would you put our game in Target? That's just.
Do they have an adult section?
Yeah.
That was wishful thinking on my part.
It was wishful thinking on my part. But so there's a known tabletop bump. Sales go up when anything appears on tabletop. I think that we enjoy that a little bit less than some like Castle Panic might have, because our game is a little less accessible to their core audience. But we certainly enjoyed.
You provided the single most entertaining episode, two episodes that you ever had.
I'm not arguing. So we noticed a bump in sales, and we had prepared for that, and they did us the tremendous favor of moving it up a month from what they had told us they were going to broadcast it. So we had some blind terror there. We had organized our printing to accommodate what we expected that to be, and they took a month out of that schedule for us. So, thanks, guys. But yes, I mean, anytime you get that kind of exposure, it's just a tremendous gift.
Thank you.
Why live? No, actually, all right. Well, we got time for one more. Just one more.
My question is to all of you. What do you all think individually about Kickstarter?
I think Kickstarter is the greatest thing that has happened. But I would have said that a month ago too, before I launched my Kickstarter. I think it is. We don't have time, but I could go on for an hour by myself about how crowdfunding is just the best thing that's happened, probably specifically to role-playing games, in a very long time.
There's a reason why a lot of the big ones have been RPG related in one way, shape, or form, or game related. It just breaks the wall between us and all of you.
Right.
And that's its biggest value.
Right. I think that is its biggest value, right? Because, you know, if you're sitting in your ivory tower in Renton, you have no idea.
Mine's also in Redmond.
Redmond.
And it was made of onyx, not
To be
not-
clear.
No, I'm referring to myself, right? You're sitting at the coast, you have no, you're just thinking, I think this will work, and I think people will like it, right? You have no idea. But as a creator who can then turn around and launch a Kickstarter and see that thousands of people like that idea enough to pledge money, right? Because what better way is there to say, yes, I like this idea? You know, it's awesome. It's great.
I can't wait for my Reaper minis.
The cautionary tale there, though, too, you need to be very careful about what you wish for because you might get it. So be prepared for that if you're launching a Kickstarter.
I can certainly say that without Kickstarter, I would not be putting the coming fall 2013 on my business cards very much. I would not have a funding model yet established for it. So the vista that this has opened up is just unbelievable. So concur with everything said.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.